Good morning, everybody. As always, it's good to see you. Actually, I suppose I should really be saying good morning, Ada, and good morning, Azina, because, as you probably know, Liz has left us, and therefore is no longer part of this program. Well, we're getting close to the end now. To my knowledge, we have a few things to wipe up, and they include what I'm going to look at today, which is managing change, or what is often called transition management. I'm going to, if I've got time, probably touch on delegation. If not, we'll leave that to another session. Then we've got to have a session on presentation and how to do a good presentation, a powerful presentation. And you know, we don't just present when we do things like this, like teaching. We present when we're preaching. And the principles are exactly the same. So it will help us, hopefully, in our ministry. Then I'll check the syllabus and make sure that we've covered everything. And you'll be moving into, I'm afraid, the exam phase, which will be possibly weeks 2 and 3 of December, because I'd like you to get it finished by my part, certainly finished by the end of December. The exam will be in 2 parts. There will be a series of questions, which you will answer across the whole syllabus, and there will be a case study, a project that you're required to do as well. However, overall, it will be your overall scores that determine whether you pass or fail. And as you both, I think now, 60% is the current pass rate required. And then you need to let me know if you want to go on to be ordained, because I'd be delighted to do that for you. So today, we're going to talk about change. Now, change is something that has been with us since the beginning of time. You know, it's always present. It is one of the certainties of life. I mean, in England we often say the only certainty in life is death and taxes. But actually there is an additional one, which I would say is and change. However, for hundreds of years, change moved at a very low rate, possibly less than 1%. And it wasn't until the Industrial Revolution and until countries like the US started to introduce manufacturing processes that were automated that the change curve, as we call it, if you remember the change curve that you've heard me talk about, started to accelerate. And by now we were moving at possibly 10, 15, 18% rate of change taking place. Today, of course, change is running at a rate of 33% per year, which tells us that every 3 years, everything we know in the world has doubled. Everything we know. So if I took my doctorate 25 years ago, what value is it to me today? Unless I've kept up. And most people, of course, in the educational field now use a concept known as lifetime learning. In other words, recognizing that you have to constantly keep up. Otherwise, the alternative is decline, becoming static, losing ground, and others overtaking you. Those that are keeping up, if you like. Let's tell you from Christian Warren's perspective, you may be interested to know. I mean, because we work through technology, I recognise that every 12 months, whatever technology I'm using is out of date. Now, that doesn't mean to say it can't be used. Indeed, I make a point of giving my computer, this computer that I'm using now, will be given away at some point in time to somebody. And it, for them, will be a perfectly good computer. But the new one I have will be faster, bigger, pictures will be sharper, etc., etc. It's just improvement upon improvement. You know, one of the major business trends in recent years was the move towards what we call TQM, Total Quality Management. And the concept was simple. It's about getting things right first time, every time. And that requires keeping up with change. I think, you know, when I think about the universal church, we've got some great examples how they failed to keep up with change. I mean, God bless them, the Anglicans. You know, they are losing ground at such a fast rate because nobody's asking the question, why are we not keeping up? Do you know the average Anglican person attending church on a Sunday is 61 years of age? That's the average. So that means there's going to be some in their 90s and probably a few in their 40s. The average population in an Anglican church is reduced now to under 30 people. And Anglicanism is seen as possibly the major Protestant faith, coming only second to the Catholic Church. So why hasn't it kept up? Well, it's because, quite clearly, people are not looking for the signs, are not looking for the changes. You see, by contrast, the Pentecostal church, evangelical, charismatic churches are growing, are thriving. Now, if I was the Archbishop of Canterbury, I'd be asking questions like, why are they doing so well and we're not doing so well? And I'm afraid I thought about that question and I think I know the answer. Because they are so enriched in tradition and dogma, and this is the way we've always done things, so we always will do things like this, but they won't change. They won't change. And like anything that doesn't change, sooner or later they'll become extinct. I actually wrote to the Archbishop of Canterbury yesterday about the decline in the Anglican Church and pointed out that with the coming of the worldwide federation, Pentecostal Federation, we will be much bigger than they are. We will expect a seat at the top table. I am contacting television companies and broadcasters to get this fact out there. Because we're thriving. I mean, Anglicans worldwide claim 275 million adherents. We already, and we've not launched the Federation yet, have almost 500 million in it, which puts us second to the Catholic Church. I couldn't help myself, but when I was writing to the Archbishop, we've got our eyes on the Catholic Church to become bigger than they are as a movement. Because I want our beliefs to be heard, and they're currently not being heard. I had an experience about 4, 5, maybe longer, years ago, when I went to Anglican church, and I never heard one mention of the Holy Spirit. What I was given was a timetable of what we were going to say and what we were going to do. And the Spirit inside of me, which is freely given in love by God to me, was not allowed to express itself. That's not for me what my faith is about. So the attention curve, which started off very slowly in the 70s when computers came along, started to rise fast, and it's got faster and faster and faster and faster. Some technologies are lagging behind. For instance, the effectiveness of batteries is, talking of which, I just glanced and seen that mine is getting fairly low, has not kept up with the pace of change. So, yeah, it's improved dramatically, but it's still nowhere near good enough. But there's a lot of research going on, so there will be times when my computer will be able to be charged and last for a few days rather than 6 or 8 hours, which it currently lasts without electricity. Now, the strategy for managing change is called moving the critical mass. Now, some of you may have heard me talk about this before, and if I have, I apologize, but it is an important principle you need to understand. And it goes something like this. In any group of people, or in any organization, there is what we call a bell-shaped curve. That's a curve that looks like a bell. And what you can do is, at one end of the curve, you can draw a little line just inside the bell-shaped curve. And you can write against it the word early adopters. And then at the other end of the curve, you can draw another little line just inside the curve and call it laggards. Laggards. Lovely old British word that. Comes from the word slow, I think. Now, if your organization is sitting here with its bell-shaped curve and you need to move it that way, the strategy is, how do you do it? Well, let's talk about these two groups of people. The early adopters, you will know who they are. I know who they are in Christian Warriors for God. I know them by their enthusiasm, their openness, their willingness to do new things. So, the strategy is to find out who your early adopters are and focus your efforts on them. Forget the other possibly 80%. Focus on that 20%. Because what happens is this in human behavior, because in managing change, we're talking about managing behavior, changing beliefs, attitudes, and these sorts of things. But what happens is the impact of that small, say 20% of early adopters starts to rub off onto the big section, which is called the critical mass. Now, the critical mass is just everybody else, basically, except the laggards. We'll come to them in a moment. But basically, it's everybody else, and the people are positioned somewhere in there. But human behavior in the critical mass is interesting. when they see early adopters changing and doing things differently, they tend to say, me too. Me too. Why can't I do that? I want to be a part of that. And so what happens is your critical mass, your bell-shaped curve, starts to move slowly the right direction to where you want it to go. Now, not all of the critical mass will be quite so keen, but a lot of them will. And the more that do, the bigger, if you like, your early adopters group becomes. Because if you remember when we talked about influencing, the highest level of influencing is that you're not only influenced, you go out and you influence other people to your thoughts and your ideas. So we have the early adopters, we have the critical mass who get moved just by watching what the early adopters are doing. And then we have the laggards. Now, the laggards are the people who do not want to move under any circumstance. They want it to stay the same. They feel safe. They feel secure, knowing that tomorrow's going to be the same as yesterday. Well, sadly, it's not true. Tomorrow will be different to today. Now, the laggards will resist. They will sometimes obstructively resist. And we've seen it in Christian Warriors for God. You know, we call a meeting. We say it's important. Everybody has to be there. But a laggard won't be there. Because they don't want to be a part of something new. And are not interested in managing transition or change. Now, the sad reality is, as a leader, you have to deal with these people. Now, I always try to use persuasion and conviction, but I have to tell you, there is also a point where you have to say, enough, leave us, go, you are holding us back. That's tough to do. That's tough as a Christian. But, you know, I work for a bigger leader, God, and I have to be prepared to take whatever actions I need to take to be successful for him. He's my master. So, you've got your bell-shaped curve. You've got your early adapters. You've got your critical mass in the middle. You've got your laggards at the end. Do not waste too much time on the laggards. They will, some of them, come kicking and screaming, but become part of the critical mass, or they will have to go. It's as simple as that. And sometimes they make that decision, but sometimes we have to make that decision for them. We've had many examples in the 6 years of Christian Warriors for God of having to deal with laggards. You know, they as long as things stay the same, their life is good. As long as you say, no, it's going to change, it's going to be like this, it becomes a problem to them. Now, both of you, Ada and Zena, you're part of the leadership team. You are assumed to be an early adopter, a person. It comes from, it's like a lot of these things, it comes from an American expression. The early adopters are people who want to be the first to buy the latest new toy. See my watch. That's an early adopter action. You see, when Samsung bought this out, this watch is so powerful. It's like having a computer on my hand. In fact, I can get messages, and if I want to, on it. I don't want to, quite frankly. I get enough messages coming elsewhere. But this watch will tell me all sorts of things. And I was an early adopter. Samsung produced it, and I immediately said, that's for me. That's what I want. So I got it and got in fast. And now people often say to me, what can you do with your watch? And I say, well, it's interesting. It'll tell you the time, but it'll tell you how much oxygen I'm using at the moment and how many steps I've walked today and the temperature outside. It'll tell you what my heart rate is. And if I press another button, it'll start to give me more information, like how much sleep I had last night and how good was the quality of my sleep. And it goes on and on and on in terms of what it can do. It's a computer. That's what technology has done on my wrist. As I say, I can set it to all my messages to go there, but I don't want that. Quite frankly, I really don't want that. So I've chosen not to use that option. Early adopters, get in quick, start using the new ways of doing things quickly. Managing transition is an important part of being a leader. Many of us are in churches that are old and staid and, well, this is the way we do things around here, this culture stuff. And you've got to bring about change. If your congregation is old, you've got to start getting some new blood into it. You've got to start addressing issues like low attendances. And if you carry on doing the same old thing, you're going to end up with the same old result. You know, that's a psychological definition of insanity. Insanity is defined as doing the same thing over and over and over again, whilst expecting something to be different. Well, of course, it never is different. If you're doing the same old thing, it's the same old thing. So, managing transition for you as leaders is an important skill that you really must have. I'm looking at the clock and I'm seeing I've got about 8 to 10 minutes left. So I just want to talk about a small subject, but an important one that we haven't touched on so far. Or if we did, we only skimmed over it. That is the subject of delegation. You see, delegation is both an art and a science. It is arguably the best tool you have in your kit bag to help you achieve your goals as leader. But a lot of people misunderstand delegation. Delegation isn't me just saying to Ada, I want you to go and do this, that, and that. Bye. Good luck. That's not delegation. That's passing the buck. Delegation is a process. It's a process of steps that you go through in order for the person who ends up doing it is doing it properly. It's not passing the buck. I'll tell you something funny. When Sue was getting ready to go into hospital recently, and we knew that I was going to need to care for her for some time, I had to get her using delegation to teach me how to use one of our, what we call, fast fat fryers. They're machines for doing fries in and sausages in and just about anything else you want to fry in, but they only use a tiny amount of oil and they are driven by high intense heat. Now, Sid's been using it for some time. I never quite knew the mysteries of it. So we went through the process of delegation. And it goes like this. Firstly, she showed me how to use it. She said, you have to put your hand around the back here, switch to on. You'll see the green light comes on. Yeah, got that. Then she said, in order to, before you can use it, you need to warm it up. You have to set the timer by pressing this button plus to 5 minutes. And in 5 minutes, it'll be ready to start cooking food. So she pressed it and off it went. After 5 minutes, of course, it stops. She said, now you open it like this. She showed me 2 buttons I had to press and a handle I had to lift up. And she said, the next thing you do is you pour in your oil. You only need a tiny amount of oil. You're not pouring gallons like I do in a frying pan. You only need a very, very small amount of oil. So she showed me. She then assembled the kit and said, okay, we can now, let's put some potatoes we want to fry up in the bottom part. And why don't we put some sausages and maybe some mushrooms in the top part, because it has 2 parts. So she showed me how the 2 parts fitted together. And she said, then you put your lid down, you press these buttons to make sure it's locked. And she said, you go back to the timer and you then set it for how long you want to go. And I said, well, how long's that? She said, well, usually if you're going to do chips, it's probably going to be about 20, 25 minutes. She said, you can always extend it if you look at them, and because you can see through this thing, if they don't look quite brown enough for you. So she showed it. She did it, and I watched. Then came the fun part. The next time we went to use it, I said, okay, I'll do it. You watch me. And if I do it wrong, you tell me. And I did. And I kind of got a few things wrong. Just I forgot to switch it on at the back. Which means that nothing else worked. So Sue said, no, there's a switch at the side. Ah, yeah, I remembered. So I put the switch on the side. And the green lights came up. And I said, now I know I've got to warm it first. So I pressed the buttons. She went good. Got it to 5 minutes. Great. And then 5 minutes passed. And I said, okay, I'm going to put the oil in now. And I started pressing any button I could think of that would open this machine up. And she was just laughing. She said, no, it's 2 buttons simultaneously, these 2. I said, don't you do it. I want to do it myself. So I did it. Whoops. It opens up. Now, I can put food in it. I knew how to do that bit. And I pulled the lid down. And realised that there were 2 buttons to press to lock it. It's now locked. And I went to the timer and I said, because we're having, again, fried potatoes. I love fried potatoes. Shouldn't do, but I do. I said, I'm going to set it for 25 minutes. So till I set it for 25 minutes, and you could hear it working. It was moving around and it rotates, and so that everything gets cooked. So I had a go at it, and I wasn't 100% successful, but I was pretty close. Now, the next time we came to use it, I said to Sue, I'm going to do it again. I don't want you to watch me this time, but I'm just going to see if I could do it again properly on my own. And I did. And I did it properly. And Sue said, you okay with it? You feel comfortable with that? I said, yeah. I said, when you're sitting in the chair recovering, I'll be in there knowing how to use that thing. Now, you've delegated that skill to me. Now, it's been interesting because I could use many examples of Sue and her being unwell to demonstrate what I've learned about delegation and how we've done it properly. You know, I thought all clothes went into a washing machine all at once and everything got washed together. Well, they do. as long as you don't mind your white shirts coming out pink, because the colour's right. But again, Sue showed me how to split colours from whites to use into a machine, etc., which I can now do, which I'm now trained up in. I haven't got the certificate, but I'm trained up in. Delegation's a very important skill. Let's get serious now. If you're going to delegate a responsibility of your leadership, you don't just pass it to them unless you are fully assured that they know what is expected, preferably that you have watched them do it and helped correct any mistakes they're making, and then they do it on their own. Then you, as a leader, can relax and say, well, that's not my concern anymore. That's not strictly speaking. Because as leaders, we can delegate tasks, but we cannot delegate the accountability. In other words, if I delegate something, or Margaret delegates something to, say, Jessica, if she doesn't do it right, it isn't Jessica that's going to be on the spot. It will be Margaret that's on the spot because she didn't delegate it properly. So you can't delegate the results. You have to still own that as leader. That's why doing delegation and doing it properly is worth doing. Okay, enough for today. I see 31 minutes has elapsed. I'm going to end there. What I'd like you to do for your assignment this week is fairly straightforward. I'd like you to describe in possibly 150 words some change you would like to introduce within your ministry or within Christian Warriors for God. I don't mind. I'm always open to new ideas. And how you would go about it, bearing in mind the model that we talked about, the stages of and people that are concerned, and how you deal with the people that are concerned. And then secondly, I'd like you to describe the process of delegation to me so that you're very clear about that. That doesn't have to be 150 words. Just tell me briefly about the process. Okay, that's it for today. God bless you all. Not much longer to go now, guys. See you soon. Bye-bye.